There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children begin to shift. You spend decades raising them, teaching, guiding, sacrificing only to wake up one day and feel like you've somehow lost your place. Maybe they ignore your advice. Maybe they talk down to you or roll their eyes when you speak. Maybe, and this is the hardest part, they make you feel like a burden, like someone whose voice no longer matters. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. It's one of the most painful things aging parents face. But here's the truth. Getting angry won't fix it, and staying silent won't either. But there is something you can do in this video. I'll share 6 powerful, proven strategies that can completely shift the way your children treat you without fighting, without begging, and without losing your dignity. These aren't just opinions, they're backed by psychological research and real-life examples. If you stay with me to the end, you'll discover how to restore your voice, reclaim your respect, and rebuild your confidence. And if you're ready for that transformation, hit like, subscribe to Second Sunrise, and let's begin this journey together. One of the most common, yet rarely talked about, mistakes aging parents make is this: trying too hard to win their children's approval. It starts subtly. You give in to keep the peace. You rearrange your life around their schedule. You avoid speaking up, afraid of being called difficult or too emotional. Deep down, you're hoping that if you just do enough, if you're kind enough, flexible enough, agreeable enough, they'll start treating you with the love and respect you deserve. But here's the hard truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Why? Because respect isn't earned through sacrifice. It's earned through self-respect. When you constantly prioritize their comfort over your own needs, you're sending a silent message: my time doesn't matter. My opinions aren't important. My feelings come second. And once that message is received, it's incredibly easy for them to take you for granted. This doesn't mean your children are bad people. It means they're human. And humans respond to unspoken cues more than words. When they see you always giving in, always adapting, always smoothing things over, they don't feel grateful. They feel entitled. Psychologist Dr. Kristen Neff, a leading researcher on self-compassion, explains that self-respect is a key foundation for healthy relationships. In her studies, she found that people who stand firm in their values, who protect their emotional boundaries, are not only more respected, but also more connected to others. Why? Because confidence invites respect. Let me share a story. Margaret was a strong woman. In her youth, she ran a household, balanced 2 jobs, and raised 3 children practically on her own. But in her retirement years, something shifted. Her children began making decisions without her, speaking to her like she was fragile or uninformed. Instead of speaking up, Margaret stayed quiet. She told herself, "It's not worth the fight. I just want to keep the family together." So, she went along with plans she didn't like. She bit her tongue when they interrupted her. She said yes when she wanted to say no. And slowly, her voice disappeared. Her children didn't mean to disrespect her, but they had learned that they could. And they did. Until one day, she made a change. Margaret began saying no, politely, but firmly. When they asked her to babysit at the last minute, she replied, "I have plans I'm looking forward to. Maybe next time." When they dismissed her opinions, she calmly said, "I'd still like to be heard, even if you don't agree." At first, they were surprised. But then they adjusted, because Margaret was showing them how to treat her, by how she treated herself. And that's the real power here. You don't have to demand respect to get it. You simply have to stop acting like you need their approval. When you respect yourself, others follow your lead. So how do you do that? Start by setting emotional boundaries. If something doesn't sit right with you, say it. If you're asked for something that feels unfair to, and most importantly, stop waiting for them to validate you. Here are a few practical shifts you can make. Instead of saying whatever works for you, say here's what works for me. Instead of apologizing for having an opinion, simply state it with calm confidence. Instead of dropping everything to help, ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid they'll be upset if I don't? That one question alone can change everything, because once you stop chasing their approval and start living from a place of self-respect, you'll begin to feel something powerful returning. Your dignity, your voice, your value. And veil. Notice it too. Now, let's talk about how you respond to disrespect. When someone you love disrespects you, especially your own children, your first instinct might be to argue, to defend yourself, to remind them of everything you've done for them. You want to say, I raised you, I sacrificed for you, I deserve better than this. But here's a truth that's hard to accept. Arguing rarely earns respect. It often makes things worse. Think back. When was the last time you convinced someone to truly respect you by yelling, lecturing, or trying to prove your worth in a heated moment? It doesn't work. And the reason is simple. Respect isn't something you can force through words. It's something you inspire through presence. According to psychologist Daniel Goleman, author of Emotional Intelligence, people respond more strongly to how you behave than to what you say. Your energy, tone, and calmness communicate far more than any argument ever could. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank was a retired high school teacher. He had spent his career commanding classrooms with confidence and earning the respect of thousands of students. But at home, things were different. His adult children interrupted him. They laughed off his concerns. They acted like he didn't understand the world anymore. At first, Frank fought back. He raised his voice. He listed all his accomplishments. He tried to argue his way into being heard. But the more he argued, the more they dismissed him. They saw his frustration not as strength, but as weakness. One day, after a particularly painful family dinner, Frank made a decision. He wasn't going to argue anymore. Instead, he really listened. He stopped trying to win. He stopped defending himself. He began responding with calm, steady confidence. When his kids dismissed his views, he'd smile and say, "That's one perspective. Here's mine." He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need their agreement. He spoke as a man who knew who he was and didn't need anyone else to validate it. And over time, something changed. His children began to pause when he spoke. They stopped mocking. They started listening, not because he demanded it, but because he demonstrated it. You see, when you meet disrespect with composure, you send a silent but powerful message. I am not shaken by your opinion of me. And that kind of strength, it commands attention. Now, let's shift to something that runs even deeper: emotional dependence. Sometimes, without even realizing it, we begin to rely on our children, not just for love or support, but for emotional fulfillment. You wait for their phone calls. You look forward to their visits. You replay old memories, wondering why things feel so different now. And when they don't reach out, when they seem distant or cold, it cuts deep. It feels personal. But here's a truth that can change everything. The more emotionally dependent you are on your children, the less they value your presence. That may sound harsh, but it's backed by solid research. According to family systems theory, especially the work of Dr. Murray Bowen, emotional overdependence within families creates pressure. When one person becomes the emotional center for another, the relationship loses its balance. The more one leans in, the more the other pulls away. This doesn't mean you should stop loving your children, but it does mean you must stop needing them to feel whole. Let me share a story. Helen was a devoted mother. After her husband passed, her world shrank. Her children were grown and busy with their own lives. So she clung to the hope that her kids would fill that emotional gap. She called often, sometimes daily. She reminded them how much she missed them. She gently hinted that they should visit more. But instead of bringing them closer, her efforts pushed them further away. They started screening her calls. Their conversations became shorter, more transactional. And Helen was heartbroken. Then, something changed. She stopped waiting by the phone. She stopped initiating every conversation. And she stopped placing her happiness in the hands of people who were simply living their own lives. Instead, Helen started going out again. She joined a walking club. She began volunteering twice a week. She enrolled in a local painting class, something she hadn't done in over 40 years. At first, her children didn't notice, but eventually, They did. They began calling to check in. They asked about her activities. And, most surprisingly, they started making time for her, not because she begged, but because they were curious. Because they respected the vibrant life she was living on her own. The lesson here is simple. When you stop chasing connection, you create space for it to return. You teach people how to treat you by showing them how you treat yourself. You are not someone waiting to be remembered. You are someone worth remembering. But people remember those who live boldly, not those who cling quietly in the background. So if your children don't seem to appreciate your presence, step back to punish them, but to honor yourself. Because when you show them that your life is full with, or without their validation, they will start seeing you differently. They won't just respect you, they'll admire you. Now, let's talk about boundaries. You love your children. You've given everything for them. So when they interrupt you, dismiss your thoughts, or criticize your life, your first instinct might be to brush it off. You don't want to start a fight. You tell yourself they didn't mean it, or it's not worth it. But here's what you must understand. If you allow it, it will continue. Not because they're unkind, but because you've never said no. Psychologists agree that boundaries are essential for healthy relationships. According to the American Psychological Association, people who clearly define what they will and won't tolerate experience more respect, reduce stress, and stronger emotional health. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert spent his career as a business leader. But when it came to his adult children, he struggled. They cut him off mid-sentence, ignored his concerns. Once, his daughter told him, "Dad, you're just being old-fashioned. Times have changed." He stayed silent for a long time, until one family dinner, his son interrupted again. This time, Robert put down his fork and calmly said, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen. No yelling, no drama, just clarity." When his daughter dismissed him again, he replied, "You don't have to agree with me, but I do expect respect." And when things didn't change, he set a clear boundary. "If I'm not treated with respect, I won't participate in the conversation." At first, his kids were taken aback, but when Robert didn't back down, something shifted. They adjusted. Because he wasn't fighting them, he was leading them. Here's how you can begin. 2. Name the behavior. I feel disrespected when I'm cut off. Be calm, not emotional. Your tone matters more than your words. Be specific. I'm not willing to talk when I'm being mocked. Set consequences and follow through. This isn't about control. It's about self-respect. Boundaries teach others how to treat you on. More importantly, they remind you of your own worth. Now let's address something most parents avoid talking about: overgiving. You've likely given your whole life, your time, your energy, your savings, your health. But what happens when that giving becomes expected and no longer appreciated? The answer is simple. It turns into entitlement. Dr. Robert Cialdini, in his work on influence and reciprocity, explains that when people receive without giving, they start to believe they deserve what they're getting. They stop thanking you. They start expecting more. And when you finally say no, they don't appreciate all the times you said yes. They get upset that you didn't give this time. Let me share George's story. George was always there. Paid bills, gave rides, watched grandkids, rearranged everything to help. And in return, his phone didn't ring unless someone needed something. Then George got sick, needed help after surgery. No one showed up. That's when he realized his giving was invisible. Not appreciated - expected. So he stopped. He didn't slam doors. He didn't trip. He just started saying, "No, I can't help this weekend. I need to focus on myself today." His kids pushed back, but eventually, they adapted. They began to appreciate him. Why? Because they realized that his help was a choice, not an obligation. Your kindness is a gift. It has value, and it should never come at the cost of your peace. If they don't appreciate what you're giving, stop. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. Finally, let's talk about building a life outside of your children. This might be the most powerful thing you can do. Many parents pour every ounce of identity into their role as mom or dad. But What happens when your kids grow up and move on, and you're left behind? The truth is, people respect those who live with purpose. Let me introduce Eleanor. Eleanor was a widow. After her husband passed, she made her kids the center of her life. She called constantly, gave advice constantly, waited by the phone. She thought she was being loving, but her children felt overwhelmed. They pulled away. Eleanor felt lost until she decided to live again. She joined a book club, started volunteering, signed up for a painting class, made new friends, and slowly, she stopped depending on her kids for her joy. And guess what? Her kids started calling more, asking questions, wanting to visit, not because she begged, but because she glowed. When your children see that you're living, not just existing, they start seeing you with new eyes. So ask yourself, what would make you excited to wake up each morning? What part of you has been waiting to come alive again? Because when you stop living through your children and start living for yourself, you become someone they admire, not someone they manage. Now, let's bring it all together. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you inspire. And you do that by refusing to chase approval, leading with calm example, reclaiming emotional independence, enforcing clear boundaries, giving with intention, not obligation, and living fully outside of their shadow. You are not invisible. You are not a burden. You are still a force, still a soul, still deserving of dignity and love. If this message spoke to your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Second Sunrise, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these 6 shifts will you try first? We'd love to hear from you. And if someone you know needs this reminder, send it their way. This is Second Sunrise. Thank you for being here. You deserve peace. You deserve joy. And above all, you deserve respect.